Hello. Welcome. As a reminder, this is being recorded, and feel free to stay on video or off, or keep your name on or off, as this will be published on the internet at some point, either YouTube or maybe somewhere else that I just haven't thought of yet. So it is totally up to you how vocal or how much you want to show up in this workshop. So everything is optional. So just remember, yeah, if you wish to remain anonymous, it is always so good to see you though. Hi, Luciana. Is that how you say it? Did I say it correctly?
Yes.
Okay, good. Good to see you. Coming from Uruguay.
Yes. Thanks a lot.
Amazing. Okay, so, and then this workshop is for educational purposes only. It's not a substitute for mental health counseling. General suggestions and advice may or may not apply to you, even if I, Destiny, am your therapist. When I ask you to write an answer in the chat, remember it's also completely optional. Everything is always an invitation, not a demand or a requirement. So that's important for you to feel like you have an option. Nothing is mandatory. And then please have a pen and paper with you for the workshop. That'll be really helpful for yourself. So we'll go ahead and get started. Okay, so I've done this workshop once before, but it was completely different. And the whole purpose of it is to help us feel like we are not a burden in our relationships when we have need. And a big part of that is figuring out what your needs even are. So that's what we're going to learn a little bit about today. And about me, I am a licensed professional counselor in the state of Georgia and Florida in the US. I have lived experience with chronic pain, undiagnosed issues for many, many years, lots of musculoskeletal pain, migraines, GI distress, all of the above, brain fog, all of the things those mysterious symptoms that everyone makes us feel crazy for. But we are not crazy. And there are more and more answers coming out, which I think is amazing. And if anybody does want to share either in the chat or verbally, I'd love to hear what's bringing you to this workshop. So what you feel like you're struggling with as far as feeling like, do you feel like you're a burden in your relationships? Do you maybe know someone else who feels this way and you're trying to help them and trying to learn more? Like, just let me know again in the chat or verbally. And so there's a common saying, if you don't ask, you'll never know. But I think for a lot of us, it's more like, if you don't ask, you can't be disappointed. So over time, we learn that our requests aren't met well or how we want them to be received. And we slowly start to stop asking people more and more and isolate more and more, especially when people don't really understand what we're going through. It's hard to keep asking and asking just to be rejected over and over again. And so if that is you, my hope is that you will take what you're learning here today and slowly figure out ways that you can start asking for things again in your relationship. Start giving more and asking for more. Giving more might not, depending on your state, you might not need to give more, but maybe give differently within your relationships. So it's so important as we're here trying to figure out, how do we be more involved in our relationships? How do we not feel like a burden? How do we help ourselves to reach out more? Remember, we're not trying to force ourselves to reach out. Instead, we're actually trying to become really familiar with what situations we might be in that increase our natural desire to reach out. And then when you find yourself in situations that naturally occur that make you feel more social, let's notice the intricacies of how we feel physically, the thoughts we think, and the desires we have when we're already in that state of mind. So, like, what does it feel like to feel connected to others? And I'm going to help you figure that out. So if you are familiar with the polyvagal theory, there are three, I'll explain a little bit if you're not familiar, but there are 3 states of being according to the polyvagal theory. And the three states are ventral, vagal, sympathetic, and dorsal or shut down. Ventral is the state of like, it's your happy place for your nervous system. It's when you feel safe and secure. And when we feel safe and secure, that's when we tend to feel connected to other people. The things that make us feel safe and secure is different for all of us. So that's why this is such a personal development journey rather than me telling you, here's how to feel safe and secure. It's more of your own understanding of what your body's wants and needs are. So when you are in your ventral vagal state, we also call this the state of social engagement. We tend to feel relaxed in our body. That means like a slower heart rate, regular breathing, like a lowered healthy blood pressure, positive emotions like calm and contentedness and feeling connected. And again, social engagement, you're open to communication, empathy, and building relationships. And then we have the sympathetic state or the fight or flight. This state kicks in when your nervous system perceives danger. And what our bodies perceive as danger could be, again, it changes for all of us. For one person, it might be a simple look in someone's eye. Maybe that look brings you back in your body. You don't even think about it consciously, but maybe that look reminds you of someone when you were a kid who was mean to you or abused you. These little things pop up in our adult life that we just don't even think about. Because again, it's like, it seems so disconnected, but we are such visual beings, and over 90% of communication is considered nonverbal, meaning that the words that you say are hardly as important as how you say it. And so when somebody's saying, hey, we have a deadline by 5:00 today. I need you to get this work thing in. And they say it maybe just a little bit sharply, the way that, again, maybe someone not so nice from your childhood used to say things. This person here might not actually be being abusive, but it might bring us back to that place. And then we can really easily get into fight or flight. And then on top of it, we might be really confused as to why we're responding this way because we haven't made that connection yet. So fight or flight, again, it kicks in when your nervous system perceives danger, and it prepares your body for immediate action. That's why, again, we're going to either fight the danger in front of us or we're going to flee it. This can feel like increased alertness, a faster heart rate, rapid breathing, elevated blood pressure, and sharper senses. Like you hear every little noise or you see like every little movement in the room. It also can feel like your energy is increasing. So in a way that like your muscles tense up, blood flow starts to increase, and we start to focus on survival. Your body prioritizes immediate needs, pushing digestion and other non-essential functions aside. So this is why a lot of times when we're feeling really stressed, we might have gastrointestinal issues, constipation, diarrhea, things like that, because your body is like, I don't need to do anything with my digestive tract. All I need to do right now is fight what's in front of me or run away from it. And then lastly, we have dorsal or shut down, and this is the last resort state. So if the danger feels overwhelming, like, okay, I can't fight or flight, because both of those things are going to they're not going to lead to success. Then your nervous system starts to shut down to conserve energy because it says, why am I going to fight if I'm not going to win? Instead, let me like go into play dead, basically. And I'm going to shut everything down. And this can feel like dissociation, where you feel disconnected from your body and your surroundings. It's like you're in a daze, or, someone says something, you barely register it. You barely hear it because, again, your body's in a state of shutdown. And when we live with a chronic illness, this is where fight or flight and shutdown is where we mostly live. Because our body, there's these internal threats all the time going on with our body. It's important to remember when we're talking about mental health and chronic illness that these things are just all connected, but it doesn't mean one causes the other or something is the fault of the other. It's more like, again, like if your hormones are out of balance, they're just like out of whack, they're doing really, really painful things in your body, you are naturally going to feel fear and threat. And then that spills over into, again, somebody might be talking to you and maybe they're talking a little bit too loud. And now your body is like, oh, I'm already overwhelmed with what's happening in here. So this loudness over here, like it's just too much. And again, so this can feel like dissociation. It can feel like numbness. And we go into conservation mode. Your body functions slow down, digestion stops, and you might feel frozen or immobile. That can look like laying in bed or staring at your screen and like doing nothing because you're just sitting there staring. That can happen. So I want to do a little exercise with you all. We're gonna draw ourselves in each of these states. And remember too, like if any of this feels really activating and you start to feel really like if you feel scared or you feel like this is just too much, I encourage you to pause, even close the workshop out. You do not have to stay. But go and do something that's going to ground you. And then we try to make sense of it by reaching out to our support system, whether that's a therapist, someone close that understands you when you're in fight or flight. But that's part of this workshop too, is how we reach out. And I'll get to that in a little bit. Okay, so I want to encourage you to draw yourself when you are in the ventral state. So on your paper, you can just draw a stick figure if you're not good at drawing like me. And just start to write down words, or if you are really good at drawing and you're really good at mental imagery, you can think about what it looks like or what it feels like when you're in this like connected space. So I've put some words here on the screen to help you kind of jog your memory of what it might feel like, but I encourage you to take the next couple of minutes and really just think for yourself of what does it feel like when I feel connected, when I'm naturally connected, not when I'm trying to make myself be. So I'm going to give you 2 minutes to go ahead and draw some of that out. Okay. To take a moment, you've been drawing what it feels like when you're in your connected state or your happy state. And if you are able to tap into any physical sensations, like what does this feel like? Really notice that. If you're not able to, if you notice yourself jumping from, okay, this is what it feels like, and then your mind quickly brings you into state of fight or flight or shutdown, it's okay. Just notice that. Notice the, okay, this is what it feels like to feel connected. Now I feel disconnected. Connected, disconnected. We're not trying to necessarily change anything. We're just trying to notice. so that we can become really familiar with each state. And with that being said, I want to encourage you to now draw on a new piece of paper what it feels like to be in a state of fight or flight. And so I've again listed some words here to help jog your memory, but you use whatever is accurate for you. And I'll give you 2 minutes. So again, just noticing like what does that feel like in my body? Is it a little increase of heart rate or a breath, a sharper breath? And if that starts to feel overwhelming, just remember to bring yourself back into you have this knowing of what it feels like to feel connected. Even if you can't stay there very long, we can jump back and forth between the two, knowing that we have access to calm, relaxed, and we also are able to fight and flee, which is actually a survival mechanism and is a very healthy thing that we do. And the next thing is going to be dorsal shutdown. This is that dissociated, numb, lots of laying in bed or just feeling detached, even like brain fogginess that like I can't think straight. I'm just kind of in a fog. That is dorsal shutdown. And so again, I'll give you 2 more minutes to draw this state for yourself. What does it feel like when you're in a state of shutdown? Okay. So bringing yourself back into your room, noticing how you feel. And notice if, as you tapped into each of these states, if you feel like you're staying stuck in any one of them, or if you are able to kind of move in and out. And just notice, like, okay, I'm remembering what it feels like to be in shutdown, but I'm actually feeling pretty socially connected right now. Or I'm feeling fight or flighty right now. Feeling anxious, feeling right. So just notice here's my memory of what it feels like to feel one way. Here's how I feel right now. Knowing that those two different states can sometimes feel confusing, but it's also totally normal and natural to, when you go into the memory of something, your body responds as if it's happening right now. And one more thing about these three states before we move on to some more of the language around feeling like a burden and friendships and reaching out for support. I will stop this screen and bring us to this one. Okay. Some of you may have seen the polyvagal ladder where it's like a hierarchy. Um, and this is just a different way of looking at it. I'll show you the difference. The polyvagal ladder is like this hierarchy. So it's kind of linear, which I think a lot of us do think in linear ways. You can see it's like shutdown, and then we move into fight or flight, and then we move into social engagement. And again, it's linear, but my brain works a little bit better these days when things aren't so, because the world doesn't really work linearly. Nature doesn't work in a linear fashion. This is a slightly different way of looking at it. So when we're in shutdown, take a moment to remember what your shutdown feels like, and we start to slowly come out of shutdown, we have to move into fight or flight. A lot of the times we try to get out of shutdown and go straight into social engagement. I got to get out of bed. I got to stop laying in bed all day, and I got to go feed my family. Or I've got to go meet my friend for coffee because I promised them and I've canceled 3 times already. We try to do this. We forget that fight or flight has to happen. That doesn't mean it has to look like, an anxious ball. Like it doesn't mean it has to be extreme. It can be very small, very subtle. But when you start to get out of shutdown, you might feel anxious. And then that anxiety, in an effort to get away from it, we might say, oh, I have to cancel. I'm not in a good state. I'm not in a good state to go be social. And we'll go right back into shutdown. So when we're in fight or flight and we know we have to move through it to get to the other side, this is where things like coping skills and sometimes mindfulness works, sometimes it doesn't. That's probably a different topic for a different day because there's a lot to be said about that. But things that will help you move through fight or flight. So we're not trying to control it. We're not trying to change it. We're actually just trying to, it's like if you think about a fire, a house with a fire, and you're trapped and shut down. There is a fire and you have to get to the other side to get out the door. You have to move through the fire. You don't have access to water. You don't have access. So you might have to run through it and then you can get it to safety on the other side. But if you say, no, I can't touch, I can't even go anywhere near that fire, then you're going to be stuck in that house. This is kind of what happens again when we have a chronic illness. It's like everything feels like a fight. So if we start to feel the fightiness, that the fight or flight that starts to happen when we start to move, for example, you get out of bed and you realize, oh, I have this headache is starting to hurt, or like my anxiety is starting to spike. Okay, I got to go shut down. I got to shut down again. Then we're never going to get over to this side here. So instead, we use our tools to help us move through. So you might not have water to put the fire out, but you might notice that there's like a blanket that you can just cover the fire with and then run over it quickly and then get over to social engagement. Or, we can slow this all down too in a different way, where maybe it's not as dangerous as a fire, so it's less dangerous than that. It means we have more time to kind of slowly react and slowly move through fight or flight. That slow movement through can help our body stay kind of calm and centered while we're experiencing something that feels dangerous, like pain in our body. And again, it's moving through and being willing to feel. That brings us over into social engagement. So I want to pause and see if there's any questions, either verbally or in the chat. Please feel free to get some questions. I will go back and share.
Maybe my English is not so good, but I was thinking that in those three states, I felt I really saw that moment of trying to connect and being afraid of like the fight or flight moment. And it makes me think that at least for me, that moment is always like an isolated moment.
Yeah.
I think that's the most frightening thing. Maybe I prefer to shut down instead of like that. I don't know, like
That gets into some of our fears over here of being in a relationship with people. So there's fear of rejection, fear of being perceived as weak or burdening, being too much for our loved ones. Hey Jen, yeah.
Hi, Destiny. I was taking lots of notes here. This is great. I was just wondering if you could repeat like the I heard one of the ways to get out of a shutdown, and soothe or vengeful would be, well, I know we have to go through the fight or flight, but you said one of the ways is to just like slowly go through the fight or flight, maybe be mindful of it. But you said another one before that I missed.
Trying to think what I said. I think I was just talking about like we might quickly move through fight or flight.
Okay.
If there's a fire, we might like put a blanket down on the fire. There's still fire going on, right? But we put the blanket down, we can run over really quickly and get to the other side. But as I was giving that example, I realized that's such a fast movement. A lot of times when we move really, really fast, we boomerang right back into dorsal shutdown. And so then I wanted to give another example. Like this also can be moving through fight or flight. We can slow that experience down by being really mindful about it, noticing I do feel really fighty, and that fear there is making me want to go back into shutdown. So then if I slow all that down, I might then say, what decision do I want to make here? Do I want to go back into shutdown because that really is what's safest for me right now? Or do I move forward into this social engagement because that is genuinely what I want, and I know that I can handle what's happening right now, even though it's scary. So
It's so great.
good.
Yeah, thank you. And I love I've been using that, like my house is on fire analogy. It's interesting because my husband is, in, I've been using this in terms to him. He's in dorsal, shutdown, as we've been experiencing this, as a team and a partnership. And, I'm in fight or flight, screaming the house is on fire, and he's kind of stuck in there. So anyway, that was a great, perfect analogy for me. Thank you.
No, thank you for bringing that up, because other people can affect us it can feel so confusing when I'm in shutdown. The house is on fire. How can you not see that? And how can you not be in fight or flight with me? We have to fight this together. Right. But,
Yes.
And in the sense of a house being on fire, of course, fight or flight is the safest option there because you genuinely have to get out of the fire. But there are different analogies that work for different people when their body feels unsafe. And so if we're talking about being attacked by a tiger, playing dead going into dorsal shutdown is going to be likely what's safest. And then they might move on to a different thing that they want to eat. So it just depends on like how, and this is why we want to get so in tune. Like, is it that my body's on fire and that's why I can't stay out of fight or flight? Or am I being eaten by a bear or a tiger? And that's why I go into shutdown so much. And the fears that we have, like this is just examples here. That's why I encourage you, write your fears down in the chat. Luciana, you were starting to talk about like being alone. And so if you have any of these fears here, depending on what the fear is and how you feel safest, like, it's interesting when we talk about being ventral, we talk about feeling safe here. This is why linear thinking can be so hard because all of this overlaps. You might actually feel safer when you're in dorsal shutdown or safer when you're in fight or flight. And so if that's the case, you're going to go into one of these two states in an effort to feel safer than you would if you were trying to socially connect with people. Which is why we're not so much trying to change the states that you're in. We're just trying to notice what naturally brings me to a feeling of connectedness with other people. So what does my environment look like and feel like? When I feel best socializing with my friends, for example, it usually is like, well, it used to be like my house had to be clean. There were all these things that had to happen before I would like be able to leave my house. I have since realized that just being in connection with my friends is what makes me feel safe. And then I can actually come home and clean. Like I'll have the energy for it because I've just been filled up. So we also have to consider like, what rules did you grow up with? You can't go outside until you've done your homework. I don't know if that's just an American thing or if that's all over the world, Luciana. But yeah, there are these rules that we live with. Oh, you're on mute.
I was student, so that didn't happen to me.
So yeah, it's really just about understanding how these three states work and what brings us naturally into that state. If we're there's this belief we have or this rule that's in our head about what we have to do before we can engage with the things that make us feel good, like free time, social, all of that, then it's going to be very hard to get into a ventral state if you're always moving to do something to deserve this. So a lot of times with our friends, we are trying to deserve their love, deserve their attention, deserve their whatever it is we're looking for from them. But we forget to just like show up and be who we are. So I want to go into some expectations. These are, there's a researcher, Jeffrey Hall, that kind of identified 6 expectations that we tend to have of friends. And these expectations are, like I said, he identified 6 of them. That doesn't mean these are the only 6. That's just what he wrote about in his literature, in his research. And I think part of what he was getting at with identifying these is that we tend to kind of have all of these expectations at once and I'll go through them. But we tend to have all of these expectations at once when really different people might meet different expectations. And so we want to get really, really comfortable and familiar with who can do what for me. So for example, the first one here is symmetrical reciprocity. So this refers to a give and take, right? I give a little, you give a little. Maybe it's the type of friend where you pay for lunch, they always make sure they pay next time. Maybe you always pay for lunch, but they always like drive an hour to you instead of you driving to them. That could be an example of a good, healthy give and take as well. So we just want to feel like both people are putting in equal effort. But again, not everyone can put in equal effort. We might be the one not giving enough. Not being able to give enough because we're sick, we're tired, right? So expectations also change over the course of a friendship's life. The other thing that that comes an expectation that we have is agency. So this focuses on what friends can offer each other practically. So like, can you rely on them for help when you need to pack up and move your house? Or can you rely on them for help when your kid is sick and someone needs to drive your other kid to daycare? Can you rely on them for help when you need something? And again, this would change with each friend. The other one is enjoyment, that friendships should be fun, right? But fun looks different to every person, and what you find fun might be different than what your friend finds fun. I love going to a coffee shop and just chatting with friends. But I have one friend who is more like, no, we got to go do something fun. Like we have to like go painting or something, or like go do something, right? She likes more of that energetic, like upbeat kind of like, that's fun for her. And so we have to find ways to compromise on that, because those extremely high energy situations drain me. So another expectation we have is instrumental aid. So it kind of goes like beyond the practical help and is more like emotional support, or like lending a hand in times of need, like cooking meals or something like that. It's instrumental aid. And again, different friends will be available for different things. So what is all of these expectations that we have? Again, we might actually have all of these expectations of all of our friends, and then we might feel let down constantly because not everybody can give you all of these things. So we want to become really familiar with who can give us what. Another thing we tend to like to have is similarity. So people who have similar experiences. And when you live with chronic illness, this is a lot of times we really want people who understand us. And so if that's the case, we tend to also have friends who have their own chronic illnesses, because there's really no way to understand what we're going through unless you've been through this yourself. So again, if you're expecting friends to understand the intricacies of your chronic illness, the only way you're going to find that is really if the other person has a chronic illness, which means you're leaving out all the people in your life that don't have a chronic illness. So we might learn to curb our expectation of understanding and similarity in an effort to have a relationship with that person. It doesn't mean we put up with being dismissed or not, or just like a total lack of care. That's not what this means. It just means like they might not fully get it, but they're kind to us, they're compassionate, and like they do honor our boundaries and requests. We just know that they don't fully understand. And then we can be okay with that. And then lastly is this expectation of communion. So like, how often do you talk? How often do you get together physically? So take a moment to kind of think about like, what do I expect from my friends? What do I expect that I feel let down about? What do I expect that I actually receive? And I'm so glad that I do get this from people. I'll give you a couple of minutes to think about that. Any shares that you want to share about kind of what you notice about your expectations of others?
I remember before I started feeling like a burden, I used to be really aware of how much better it was to help than to need help.
Yeah.
I was really aware of that. I have I I like to help a lot, like in the street, in the bus, wherever. And from some time till now, I like each time more, I feel like I don't really have much like to give.
Yeah.
Maybe sometimes I search for the things to help, but I'm aware that it's just little thing. And reading this of the expectations, I was thinking that even if it's great to help, I also think that there's something like um how do I say it, like what's the word, like try like not needing help, like it's much easier not to need help. It's like there's something good and something bad. I don't know.
It feels easier to be able to just do it yourself.
No, or to help.
Yeah. Yeah, to be the one, right? That you're the one helping. You're the one doing. Yeah. It does for some of us. That's where some of our like different personalities come into play. There are some of us that truly just feel, we feel better when we are the one helping. But there's other people that feel better when they're the ones being helped. And so it's just noticing again, your own, like, what does this mean for me? I'm the one who likes to help. And how do I invite space for someone else to also give help? Because maybe they're also the person that likes to be of use to people. They like to be in service to people. And can it be reciprocal in that maybe they are more active than I am and they come over and cook dinner, but maybe they're going through a really hard time and I'm a really great listener and I help in that way. Jen, I think you had your hand up.
Yes, this was really interesting, and it seems like these have shifted over time, for me, and I'm thinking about it on both ends, like for me and for my friend. I feel like it's shifted, and two things that occurred to me. One, that last one, communion, that, so I really love sharing and mutual, like, back and forth. And what I've noticed as my symptoms and situation has gotten worse is I feel like mm, my friends are less likely to open up and share their stuff, almost like they think that I can't handle it because I have my own thing. And that makes me sad because I want to be there for them. And then I feel like they're kind of closing off with that. So, um, and I think they're maybe doing it because they think it's hard for me as it is. But really, I think it would be better for me to be able to focus on helping someone else than constantly in my own thing, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Yeah. And sometimes we have to have that conversation with our friends. And we have to say, like, this actually, it makes me feel totally useless when I am not able to also be there for you. And part of like feeling like a burden or feeling like you can't open up to somebody because it's too much for them, or they can't open up to you because it might be too much for you. That's usually when we're starting to get into like, by my opening up to you, I expect you to fix my problems. Or by you opening up to me, I expect myself to fix your problems. Well, now it would be too much for anybody to hear about your chronic illness or hear about their problems because we have to fix each other. And that's not even a possible task. So that's like some expectations that we have of ourselves. So that might even be like the expectation of instrumental aid. If we're expecting ourselves to fix something that's not fixable, then we can't be in a healthy reciprocal relationship because there's just too much pressure. And that's when we start to drift apart because it's like, it's just too much.
Yeah, thank you. That's really, yeah, that's really, I look at that with my husband. So thank you. That was very insightful.
Welcome. Yes. Yeah, with our partners too, it's so like the expectations we start to have of each other, especially in societies where, again, like I just know about in the US, everything is very like, it's just two people living in a house. Maybe there's kids, maybe there's not. And you're supposed to run this whole household completely by yourself. You're supposed to clean, you're supposed to cook, you're supposed to do everything by yourself. Just the two of you. It's just too much, right? Whereas when we lived in communities where everybody kind of knew their role, and I might be the one cooking tonight, but like I'm cooking for 10 of us. I'm not cooking for just like me and my partner, and then you're over there cooking for you and your partner. Now 10 people are cooking in one night, all to sit down and eat alone. That in and of itself, for me personally, because I am such a social person, that in and of itself is gonna exacerbate, is gonna bring on some fight or flight or dorsal shutdown. Because I've just done all of this work to then just feed myself. Like I want to connect. I want to be with people. I want to eat with each other. I want to, talk and have fun and laugh. So then we ask ourselves, like, who do we reach out to when we're in each of these states? And this is for the sake of time, I won't ask you to do 2 minutes for each, but I have, maybe you'll write these down. I'll write it in the chat too. Who do you reach out to when you're feeling connected? That's ventral. When you're feeling fight or flight, and when you feel shut down. Think about that. And then also, how do you sound in your communication when you're in each of these states? And then how well received are you in each of these states? I want to give an example. My friend sent me this invite. I just thought it was the nicest thing because it was like so random. It wasn't anyone's birthday. It wasn't a special event. It was just like, hey, like we're all new moms. Let's just leave our kids at home and get some girl time in. And I didn't even know anyone who was attending other than my friend who was putting it on. I didn't know the rest of her friends. And she, I said, what can I bring? How can I help? Right. And that's often a really hard question for people to answer. What can I do? How can I help? Usually we just kind of want somebody to like, we don't really usually want to be asked that question because it's very hard to ask for help. So she said, I'll let you know I'm brainstorming some ideas, but haven't made a full plan yet. And then she sent me a bulleted list and said, if you would like to help with one of these, that would be awesome. But please just pick one thing. Don't go crazy. I already have 8 people coming, so I'm spreading out the task. So clear. Bring flowers in a vase, bring a coloring sheet, help clean, bring nail polish, bring a camera, bring some unscented candles. So it was like, it was just so clear. And I'm a very deeply feeling person, so I'm getting chills as I'm reading this, and it probably sounds so silly, but it's like, I don't know, I just feel like it's so hard for us to do stuff like this, to put ourselves out there, to even like host a little mini party, again, for no reason. There was no birthday, there was no nothing. And then to say, like, to plan all this and put it together and to ask for very specific requests. I thought this was such a low pressure way to ask for help, but also while being very clear and specific in your ask. So, with our partners, we can do the same thing. Like, hey, today's a low energy day, but like the trash needs to go out and dinner needs to be made. And I also really need to take a bath. Like, what can you help with? Or something like that. In a partnership, we want our partner to be able to also like pick up on the things that need to be done and for us to not have to ask for every little thing. Like, they also live in this house and they should know how to clean and how to do the next thing that needs to be done to prepare for tomorrow. But sometimes we are the ones with the to-do list in our head. So what is it like to put this to-do list out there and to say, what can you do? Rather than like, here's what I need you to do. So go do these things. And like, it's more like, that's more like us then being a mother rather than a partner. So it's all about reciprocal communication, autonomy, allowing people to show up as they are, but also, and respecting that, but also asking for our needs and all of that. Okay. So that's it for me. I would love for you to follow me on Instagram, listen to the podcast. And I host these workshops once a month. Next month is about ADHD and chronic pain, so I'm really excited to do that one. But yeah, I'm curious if anything has come up or any questions have come up for you at the end here, or if you just want to share anything with each other.
Hi, I had a thought, and I think it kind of tied into the last these little graphs that you put up as well, Destiny. I was thinking, where did it go? Yeah, I had written before you put up these 3 graphs. I put, when I'm feeling negative and down, I don't feel like reaching out. Like I often ask, because if I reach out with someone, I probably want to say like, "Hey, how's it going over there? What's going on with you?" And then they'll ask me, "How are you?" And then I'll say, either I lie and say I'm doing okay, or I say I'm terrible, and then they don't want to hear that. Uh, um, so then I often don't reach out because I think, well, I'm not going to be able to be my positive, like happy, everything's going great, rainbow, unicorn self. So that's something that I come up against, and then I feel like I'm just isolating and pushing people away because now I'm not reaching out. So do you have anything to say about that?
Yeah, it's like, so can you even label, like, what's your expectation when you reach out? And then your expectation is to be able to be honest, it sounds like.
Yeah.
And then what is the expectation that you have of someone after you have been honest about how you're feeling?
Well, I guess I'd like for them to accept me where I am and just maybe, validate or empathy, or, I'm not asking them to fix it. Maybe that's what they think. Yeah, right. I just want to be able to be honest, and um, for me not to have to pretend all the time that everything is okay.
Yeah. Yeah, you want, honesty, communion, emotional intimacy. And you might decide to have a conversation with your friends or family around this, like, hey, this is something that's really been on my mind. I feel so lonely and so isolated, and I don't reach out because when I do reach out, I don't want to be negative. But I am in a negative state. I'm just curious what it's like for you when I reach out and I'm not feeling well. Do you struggle with what to say? Does it frustrate you? Does it so you're wanting to be authentic, right? And honest in your responses to something like, how are you? which tells me that you have the ability to be honest and authentic in what your needs are. Like to have this conversation and to say, and to invite honesty in. Hey, like, is it hard for you when I respond always feeling like I'm always in a bad state?
Okay. Wow.
I feel sometimes for me, I also have that situations in which I want to say hello to my friends, but I'm in a really bad moment, and some of my friends know me pretty much, so they understand when they ask, "And how are you?" And I say, "And I'm just wanting to hear how are you."
Like you don't answer the question, you just say, "No, tell me about you."
And it's like a way of getting out of my head and feeling their love just by um hearing like hearing their voice.
Yeah. Yeah, right. So even like what is it like if you actually answered that question with like, I'm feeling miserable right now and all I want is to like hear your voice and have a fun conversation.
Mhm.
And then we get to be honest about how we're feeling and also get our like tell them what we need, which is not for them to go into super sympathy mode or unless that is what you're looking for, but it's not about it sounds like for you it's like in that moment I just want to connect, but I'm feeling really bad and I also like that I can't separate myself from that. So,
Yeah, and I don't even want to talk about how I'm feeling.
yeah. Yeah, which is okay too, right? Like to just say, yeah, like to say exactly how you said it. Like, I don't want to talk about me, but I'm really just want to connect. Tell me about your kids, tell me about your life, tell me about work this week. And so sometimes I decide like when someone says like how are you in return, sometimes I do decide to say good when I'm not good, but only when I feel like that's what benefits me in that moment. Like because I don't want to talk about it and I do just want to like get out of my own head and I want to just have like a lighthearted conversation. So sometimes I allow for that and I'm not being to me I don't really feel inauthentic for lying even though it technically is a lie because there's different way like in that moment I might actually be mentally like I feel good meaning I want to connect. I feel social. I might physically be hurting, but I'm not talking about that when I respond with how I'm feeling. I'm talking about like mentally I'm good. Well, how are you? What's up? Let's chat.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. I like that how you can I guess you have different options because one that I've done before sometimes is how are you doing that? I'll just dodge it. Kind of like he was saying, I'll just say, "Oh, I'm glad to see you now." You know, just not answer the question and move on. But it sounds like there's not one right way, and it could change from time to time. Sounds like.
exactly. So, yeah, it's recognizing how you show up, how do you feel in each of these states? And then through that awareness, it kind of also tells you, th- that awareness leads you down to like like when you can show up in the way that you want to. You might not be able to show up socially, and you don't have to make yourself when you're in total shutdown mode, but when you are in shutdown mode, like, can you just be familiar with, again, like, how do you sound when you're in shutdown? Um, for me, I sound angry. Like, I get really angry, and that's my way of basically biting off and being like, "Don't talk to me," because I can't handle anything else. But when I'm in more fight or flight, I think that usually sounds a little bit more like, "I need help, I need help, I need help." It's just, like, needy, "I need help." And then when I'm more connected and there's more than one way you can show up, that these are just examples in each of these states. Then when I'm feeling more connected, it is the more, like, grounded, like, I'm doing well, even if, like, there's still pain happening or, I had a migraine last night, but I'm going to meet a friend for lunch after this, like, And I'll be honest about that. Like, yeah, my health has been last month, I've had some increased symptoms, but like life is really good right now. And that doesn't mean I'm dismissing, like, it just means there's room for both. My life is really good right now. And I have these increased physical symptoms that are really bothering me. But I've reached out to my doctors. I'm getting support around that. Like, I'm doing what I need to be doing in order to get on the right track. And that allows me to feel good mentally. So I think it comes down to honesty. It's like, how do we be completely, utterly honest? And that doesn't always sound like one way. There's multiple ways it can sound. Yeah, this is what I have for y'all today. Any more questions or anything that you want to share before we hop off?
I was wondering, Destiny, the one chart that says who to reach out to in a different state.
Mhm.
I don't know. Is there any I mean, obviously that's different based on different people, but do you have any examples of that, or is there a good, because that is really hard to know um who to reach out to in those states, I feel like.
In my last workshop that was the same, like the how to reach out, I went more into like thinking about who's good at what in your life. And that might be how you figure that out. Like, who is really empathetic in my life? And maybe that's who I reach out to. Making sure that you're not just using one person for one thing always, because that can lead to burnout in a relationship. But if you have this healthy kind of, we go out for lunch, we go for walks, we also, this person has a lot of empathy. I know that I can call on them when that's what I'm looking for. And I know that I can also give empathy when that's what I'm looking for. And sometimes we have to like really think about other people's own defense mechanisms. The friend that I was sharing with, who put that party on last weekend, uh, she used to do that where she would be like, I'm good, like, tell me about you. And like, it felt like there was always this wall up. And it was because she didn't want to hear advice. She knows that I'm a therapist that specializes in chronic illness. So like she didn't want me to feel like she was using me for therapy when we're friends. Like there were a lot of reasons why she didn't feel like she could share with me. And so I had to like very slowly kind of chip away at some of that and be like, it's totally okay. I don't feel like it's work if you tell me about, your chronic illness. And then yeah, things like, she didn't believe that right away, but as I kept showing up consistently, now she does, and we can easily text each other like, "Yeah, I had a terrible night last night." And I think at one point I even said to her like, "When you share with me, it lets me know I can share with you too." And like I need that in my life. So it's again these honest conversations. And it was scary to have that conversation. Like it's so scary to be that vulnerable, but it's so important. So, yeah.
Thanks.
I'm gonna send Luciana, I'll send you the workbook that was with it's not a new workbook, but it's the one from my last workshop. And I can send you the last workshop too if you'd like.
Great. I loved it.
Wonderful. Thanks for showing up today. I appreciate y'all.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.
You.